We have children who had wanted to farm, but it's been a struggle at times for just Pete and I, and so to enlarge and be able to incorporate your kids and their families, just that financially wasn't able. We weren't able to do that.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
Small scale, very old school family dairies still exist, and Shelli and Pete DeJager run one of them near Everson, Washington, but it hasn't been easy, particularly as they've faced cancer and a major flooding disaster in just the last few years. Hear from Shelli as we talk this week about the challenges of keeping the farm alive and about why it likely won't pass on to the next generation. This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. I'm Dylan Honkoop, and these are documenting my journeys and the stories of the people all over Washington State, the real people behind our food. How long have you been around this world of growing milk? Because that's what you do, right?
Right. Since 1986, when Pete and I got married.
Yeah.
But it had always been a desire, and so my dad was born on the Blankers farm just north of Ebenezer School in that area.
Yeah.
And he did not want to farm, and he became an engineer and moved to California.
Oh, wow.
And all my Blankers relatives lived up here, and I always wanted to farm. So I would come up during the summers and work for my uncles. And one summer I met Pete, and then
He
we
met
got
this
married.
California girl.
He was warned that I wouldn't be a good farmer because I grew up in California and that I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah.
But I loved it, and that was just what I always wanted to do.
Where in California?
I grew up in Ventura, California, about 60 miles north of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Worked for a dairy down there.
Oh, really?
In high
Yeah, that's what I was
school.
going to ask. There's dairy down
There
there.
are,
There's a lot of dairy in
yes.
California.
Yes, and then I went to school and majored in dairy science, just trying to make up for not growing up on a farm. I thought, what can I learn? But
Yeah. So you were pretty serious about it then.
I was serious about it, but what I learned hands-on the farm has been just invaluable. Working for dairies and then marrying Pete and going on from there.
So why was it, do you think, that you wanted to do it so badly, even though you hadn't grown up with it?
When I would come up during the summers and visit my aunts and uncles, I just loved it. I just loved it. And boy, my dad kind of tried to talk me out of it. A lot of people did, but I think it's in the genes, maybe. I don't know.
It's possible. Was it the animals? Did you
I
like
love the animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know there, people in dairy, that it's such a diverse skill set that you need to run a dairy farm because you're growing crops, you're
Right.
growing animals, you're managing a lot of different stuff. And some people have their particular areas that they're more passionate about. Are you the animal kind of person?
Right. Yes, I actually really enjoy milking, and I do a lot of milking, and
Nice.
I enjoy that.
Why?
Yeah.
What is it about milking a cow that you enjoy?
I think it's just the rhythm you get into in the barn, and it's just that steady work, and you accomplish something, and it just feels good to be producing food for people. And I just enjoy it. And we've had our kids that have grown up helping us milk, and some of our best conversations have been in the parlor. So we're busy doing other things, but yet those valuable conversations happen.
Just for people, because a lot of people don't know necessarily the real details about how cows are milked now. I mean, a lot of people may still think of milking by hand. Obviously, that's not what you're doing. Explain the process for you guys. I mean, I think people have think about the old way. They've heard maybe about robots. That's the very new way. But a parlor, how does that work? How do the cows come in and how do you milk them?
Right. Well, we are small. We have we milk about 150 cows.
Okay.
A total of about 180 with our dry cows. And so we have a double 6 herringbone. So we get the cows up out of the stalls and get them into the holding area. And then you open.
And what does that take? They just shoo them in, or they know that there's going to be some grain in the parlor?
Well, we don't feed grain in the parlor. Okay. We used to, but we found that didn't work so well. So, no, we don't feed grain in the parlor. But they know when it's milking time. And for the most part, they hear the tractor start up, and we also, scrape and feed too at that time. So most of the cows get up and head toward the parlor, and then we let them into the parlor, 6 on a side, 6 at a time. And
so they just want to come in.
For the most part, there are some that they kind of move slower for me. Then we do have some milkers that help us, and they move a lot better for them than they do for me. But but they come in, and then we spray them with iodine, and that just disinfects the teat. And then we have towels, individual towels, and we wipe down the teat, get it clean. And you wait it's about, I'm not sure how long, but you wait a little bit before you reattach or attach the machine, and then we attach the machine, and then the pulsation causes the milk to come out of the cow, and then it flows into a gravity flow pipeline down into the receiving jar, and then there's a pump that kicks on, and it pumps the milk into our refrigerated bulk tank.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And the milk truck comes what?
The milk truck
once
comes
or every day or every other day?
Every other day for us, yes.
And you probably have your, stuff keeping data on making sure that the milk is always cold to a certain temperature.
Right, yes. Yep, it's stored at 38 degrees, so nice and cold, and they pick it up within 48 hours. Yeah.
And that's how it works.
And
that's very similar to what I remember. Other than both of my grandpas milked with flat barns. They didn't have a parlor. So they had to kneel down next to the cow and get the inflations on and do all of that. Destroyed their knees from doing that for decades and decades, twice a day. Every day. Is that what you guys do? You milk twice a day?
We milk twice a day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those cows know, and it's probably exactly 12 hours apart.
Right.
It's just the constant rhythm of the dairy farm.
Yes. I did some of that flat barn milking for one of my uncles, and it makes you appreciate the parlor that you can stand up straight in. Yeah,
because in the parlor, the cows are up higher, and then there's a pit that you walk down in so you can be kind of at working level and cleaning them and all of that.
It's just straight across. For me, it is.
Right, so you don't have to be
I'm pretty short.
Destroying your knees and your back and all that stuff.
Yes.
Oh, I have always said that I'm more of a crop guy than a cow guy because I can get frustrated with cows. As you well know, way better than me. They don't always do what you want.
No.
But now that I have my grandpa's old barn, I do miss having the animals in there.
Oh, yeah.
The warmth, the clanking of the stanchions as they just go in and out and get some feed or go to lay down, and as they just kind of move around, and the slap, slap, slap of a fresh pie being dropped onto the...
For sure, right?
As weird as that sounds, that's just what I remember in there. And so I can appreciate that too. And you talking about that, being in there and enjoying even milking. I never really milked. I would help my dad milk at my dad's dad's. Yes. But with as fussy as he was, it was only really his boys that were allowed to milk his cows. So the grandson, by the time he retired in 99, I was not old enough to be trusted to do that. He was very protective of his cows.
I remember your grandpa. Yes.
Well, because when you started, you were dating.
Yeah, I was dating
your husband, Pete.
Yes.
When I was a little kid and I lived right in that neighborhood there, we moved away, 2 miles away when I was 5.
Right.
But it was right there. Mm-hmm. And you were basically between my house, my parents' house, and my grandparents' house.
Right.
Well, so to get back to the history, we're jumping all over the place here. But to get back to the history, you wanted to do this. You got your degree. You met Pete. How did that go from there?
Right. Well, then we got married, and Pete was renting a farm on the Depot Road there. Yep. And so we lived
literally a stone's throw from where I've spent my first 5 years of my life.
Right. Yeah. I remember you as just a little boy riding in the tractor as your dad, hauled manure. Yep. Yeah.
Yep. And so you just started working on the farm doing...
Right. So we got married in 1986, and we've just farmed together on the farm, and that's what we've done for 36 years.
Now, it wasn't that long after you got married that you guys left that place.
Right.
What was that like? How did that all come about?
Well, we were renting it, and the people we were renting from wanted to sell. Mm-hmm. And so just through just the way things worked out, we ended up coming out here to Everson. And actually, that was just a miracle too. How that all worked out. That was definitely in the Lord's hands. How He led us here, and we've been here since 1989.
What's it been? What was this place like before you guys were here? Was it a functioning dairy? Was there a lot of work to do to get it to where it is now?
No, not really. It was a functioning dairy, and we haven't made too many changes. They raised their heifers here, and we don't. We changed the heifer barn into a dry cow barn so we could milk more cows. Right. And that's really the only major change we've made. Little things here and there, but we had plans of doing that, but it just wasn't in the cards. So,
well, talk about that. You guys are still small. I mean, still bigger than I think about both of my grandpas were. My grandpa Hank, who probably never milked more than 40, 45, maybe 50 cows. My grandpa on the other side, maybe 75. I don't know if he ever got to 100. So you're at 150, but it's still in that small scale size that there are very few of those farms left.
Right.
Why are you guys still that size? How, I guess on one hand, have you chosen to do that? Is that what you want? And on the other hand, how have you, a lot of people have said, well, they would like to stay small, but they can't. How have you been able to make it work?
I really don't know.
Probably a lot of hard work.
A lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. Sometimes Pete and I, in all honesty, shake our heads. But when you love what you do and you really want to make it work, financially it hasn't always been easy. We had hoped we could expand. We have children who had wanted to farm, but it's been a struggle at times for just Pete and I, and so to enlarge and be able to incorporate your kids and their families, just that financially wasn't able. We weren't able to do that.
That's my family's story too. I mean, I was interested in it too. I've ended up in the right place, I think, for me. I think it ended up being a good thing that I didn't. I don't think I could handle the stress, but I wanted to. But it wasn't in the cards for my family. I wouldn't have been able to support my parents and me.
Right.
That's hard.
It is hard.
What do you do?
It is hard when you feel a call for that and you love it. But the Lord works things out, and you're where you feel you are. And our son Gary, who had really wanted to farm, he still has said, "Oh, I remember the day Dad said, Gary, I just don't think it's going to work. And devastating. But, he's now working for the North Whatcom Fire Department, and he loves his work there too. And he's able to serve there as well.
That's important work too.
Yes.
Taking care of people.
Yes. And then our daughter Janice, she would have loved to as well. And I think someday she'll get her foot in the door farming or involved in the dairy industry somehow. And then another daughter married a farmer. And then our oldest son, he wasn't interested, and which is fine. It's not for everyone.
Absolutely.
So,
and don't do it if you're not interested in it.
No, for sure not. For sure not. Oh, for sure not. Yes.
So what did he find himself doing?
He's a youth pastor in Centralia.
Very cool.
So yes, so good.
So what happens? How long do you guys want to keep doing this? Would there be a chance for one of your kids to take it over? Or that was not in the cards for me or my family either.
Right. Pete and I don't think anyone will farm here after we're done. Yeah. We don't see that really as happening here. The barns are old. The facility is older. It would take a lot of money to get it up. So, Pete's 66. We'll farm. We're kind of in our fourth year in a 2-year retirement plan.
I've heard this one before. Very, very common.
It's like, what else would you do? So
exactly.
Yeah.
No, this is good, and it's good to think that through in a real world scenario like yours, because a lot of people think, well, why aren't there more small farms? Well, it's this progression, this kind of story that is played out family after family that explains why. Yeah. It is tough, darn near impossible to do in a lot of cases, as much as you might want to.
Right. As valuable as it is, and as much as you would want to, and it's difficult. Yeah, I wish more kids could grow up on farms, though, because it is such a great experience.
This episode of the Real Food, Real People podcast is sponsored by Mana Insurance Group. A big thank you to them for supporting this podcast, these episodes, all these conversations we've had all over the state for this whole season. A huge thank you to them. You can check them out online at manainsurancegroup.com. Their whole focus is working. It's an old school insurance agency, working one-on-one with you to find out what's really going on, what your needs are, what you need and what you don't need as far as insurance, and making sure you have a plan to protect your financial future rather than being forced to pick up the pieces if and when things go wrong and not have a plan. Also, thank you to Dairy Farmers of Washington for supporting the podcast all season. You can find them at wadairy.org, where they share many more stories of dairy families like Shelli and Pete DeJager, as well as all the information about the dairy products that are produced in our state, their nutrition, recipes, sustainability information, lots of great info. It's a great resource, especially if you want to know more about the kinds of dairy products, milk that are produced here in Washington State by farms like Shelli DeJager's farm with her husband, Pete. Also, Red Raspberries, Washington Red Raspberries, supporting the podcast. A big thank you to them for their support as well, producing America's best raspberries. Well, I don't know. That's just my opinion, because I grew up on a red raspberry farm here in Washington State, and we certainly appreciate their support for these conversations as well. Now we get back to our conversation with Shelli DeJager in Everson, Washington, here on the Real Food, Real People podcast. You guys, it's been just a year ago, had a disaster wash through here, the flood. And I think people saw it on the news all over. I mean, beyond the state even, it's known that there was a disaster here. But you guys were in the thick of this flooding disaster of November 2021. Almost feels like it needs a name, like, hurricane, whatever, but they don't name these floods. But to remember it, it was historic. Mm-hmm. Explain what happened during that time, because I know it hit you guys really hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had been raining, as we all know, torrential downpour. I kept thinking, nuts. This must be like the flood, like Noah's Ark flood. So Pete got up. We had been, trying to sleep, but he got up early and went out. And I could hear the doors banging different out in the barn. And I thought, something's not right. And I got up and I looked out the window, and all I saw was a shine. So just water everywhere. And I put my boots on and I head out, and Pete said, we're flooding. It's filling up fast. And it had come over in the back.
Because you're right on the banks of the Sumas River.
Sumas River.
Which takes the overflow, and this is what happened for people who followed this particular flood. It takes the overflow only in these terrible scenarios from the Nooksack River, which normally drains out to Bellingham Bay over there. Sumas River drains to
Canada,
to the Fraser River, and the overflow started coming your way, right?
Yes, and just the Sumas River itself was just full too, right, from all the rain.
Had you flooded here before?
We had minor flooding, but never in the barns. This was in the barns, in the parlor.
So you went out. Got your boots on. Sorry, I interrupted your story for the background there.
Got my boots on, and Pete said, this feels like a bad dream, but it's real. know? And so it was coming in and filling up the barns in between our machine shed and the lagoon. We have like a lane that the cows can go out to a field back there. And
the lagoon is where you store in a protected way your manure from the farm. Yeah.
Yes. So it was coming in through there, and with our skid steer, we weren't able to put like a pile of dirt big enough and get back there to block it. So our neighbors, Pete got a hold of our neighbors, and they came over with a big payloader and were able to scoop up some dirt and stop it from coming into the barn. But already cows were up to their udders, stalls were flooded, the parlor, like you had said, you stepped down into, it was flooded and up over the pipeline, over the milking machines. Water everywhere, and it just came up so fast. And so when our neighbors came, they looked in the parlor, and Alan Seitzma, he says, "You guys aren't going to be milking here today. Let's get the cows out." And of course, we knew we needed to get cows out, but where do you go?
Yeah. It's not like there's just empty barns somewhere that are ready to take cows right away. I mean, there's empty barns, but they're ready for cows.
No. And, Dylan, we have such great neighbors. So between our two farming neighbors, they each took about half of our herd. And so they came with their trucks and trailers and hauled cattle out while our son and lots of people came and helped us load cattle onto trailers. The cows are bellowing, mooing.
Yeah, they're probably freaked out because they're standing in water, right?
That's not a sound you forget. In fact, I've dreamt about going through the flood again, and you hear the cows. That's what I hear. So we get the cows out, and the trucks are pushing bumpers, or the trucks are pushing water with their bumpers. We had called different cattle haulers, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll get there if we can." And roads were flooded, but here came someone with a truck and trailer. I still don't know who they were. An angel, really, and they came and said, "We hear you need help." And so here came this young dad with his kids in the back.
Wow!
And they came and hauled cows. So their little boy's eyes were just enormous in the back of the cab of that truck. I'm thinking this memory is seared in their minds.
So you were able to get all the cows out then?
We were able to get all the cows out. And then they went to the neighbors. Yes, it was just all kind of surreal. I remember like in between loads of cows going, seeing our kids' Tonka trucks float past. And I would try to rescue what I could and put everything up like on the picnic table or higher up. And then here I see this, might sound funny, but a bag of grated cheese float by. And I knew that we have a second fridge in our garage. I knew the water was in the garage, and it opened the door, and things were just floating by. So it just kind of a really weird feeling. We were very blessed, though. Our house stayed dry. So there were so many other families that had it way more severe than what we did. We had a house, so we were so thankful and almost
so
felt
people,
guilty for that.
People that are still not back in their homes. I heard recently of a person who just this past month got back in their home. So people who haven't had a place to go home to.
Right.
Boggles your mind.
Right. Yes.
What was going through your mind during all of that? While you're getting cattle out and like...
It's kind of a blur, but just lots of prayers. Lots of prayers were going up. Thankful for our friends and farming community and neighbors who came and helped us. Thinking, how are we going to get back into the barn? What's that going to look like? Thankfully we didn't lose any cows in the flood per se. Over that time, later on, we had some cows that just never came back in milk or got pneumonia, just stress-related things. But yeah.
But it wasn't because you didn't do everything you could.
No. And Pete and I have talked about that too. You know you're responsible for your livestock, and you want to take the best care of them you can, and then to know that they're frightened and standing in cold water and bellowing, it's hard. It's hard as a farmer to have your cows go through that too.
That's a traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. And you said you still have dreams.
Yes.
Which I can imagine. Mm-hmm. And I would call those nightmares.
Right. Oh, for sure. And then you hear of atmospheric storm, atmospheric river, and it brings, some anxiety with it because you're thinking of what you went through. Yeah,
I just talked with Leah Rainey Herringa the other day. I don't know if you know her over in Sumas, and they kind of got flooded out too. Well, definitely got flooded out. She was saying, just a few weeks ago when we had that long dry spell, and then all of a sudden a bunch of rain was coming. It was just hard for her to stay calm, even though she knew like it wasn't supposed to be a flood.
Right.
She was just having all kinds of anxiety, she said.
Right.
It leaves you with that.
Right.
How were you able to get things back together? How long did it take? Did you guys stay here? I mean, the cows are gone.
Cows were gone. Weird feeling to have the cows gone for actually 2 nights and be in the house and no cows. That was odd, very odd. Yeah. But yes, so half the cows also went to Theo Van Berkham, and Theo and Cheryl's milkers were unable to get to their place. So we went over and milked at Theo and Cheryl's while our cows were there, and fun to milk in a different parlor and have that experience too. And interesting, when our cows would come in, I couldn't always see their faces, but
you
recognize them by their udder.
So you know your
like,
cows
hey,
that
this is one of ours. Oh.
So how does that work then? How do you get them back separated out? Just by the ear tag or whatever?
With at Theo's, when they came in, we put like some marker on them that, it was colored so that we could say, oh, this one's one of ours. And at Kim and Alan Seitzma's, they moved some cows around and had ours in a separate string.
Nice.
Yeah.
Incredible that was able to work out the way that it did. What would have happened if you wouldn't have had those neighbors?
Wow. A totally different scenario. With the roads being flooded, we had tried some other places first, but couldn't get through. I don't know. We had to get the cows out, but I don't know where they would have gone. I'm so thankful for our neighbors. They have helped us through quite a few things over the years, and yes.
That's what the farming community does, though, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, in the fall of 19, Pete was diagnosed with cancer, and it was stage 4, and it just came on so incredibly fast. I remember sitting here at the table, and we knew Pete was getting weaker. And we'd been doctoring, trying to figure out what was going on. And we knew it was cancer, but didn't know what kind. And we got a call from Bellingham, the Bellingham Cancer Center, that said, you need to get into the emergency now. Wow. And here Pete was talking about putting pitch on a part of the roof that was leaking, And it just everything... changes just like that. And our neighbors, Theo said, Pete, don't worry about it. I'll get the cows fed. We'll get it taken care of. We pack a quick little bag to get ready to go to the hospital. And our neighbor, John Veldman, is here with Theo, and they're figuring out, Pete had given them instructions for feeding the cows, and they're feeding the cows. And between our neighbors and friends and kids, after a long journey of medical treatments, we had a farm to come home to. So wages were paid by other people. It's just amazing, the outpouring of support we had during that time. Yeah. But between our kids and family and friends and church family, we had a farm to come home to. So we've experienced that for sure twice in such a visible way, between the flood and Pete's illness. Just that outpouring love and support that helps you through it.
So you had stage 4 cancer.
Stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What happened? That's serious. Stage 4. I mean. Right.
So we got to Bellingham, and the nurse navigator had said, when you get admitted, then just tell them you need a brain scan, you need all these different tests run, and that he has. We knew it was a lymphoma, but not what kind. And so they kind of looked at me and like, oh, there's more to this. And they started running a battery of tests. And Pete was still just getting weaker. But yeah, a nurse, the Lord was so at work in all of this timing. The hospitalist at the hospital happened to see the head doctor at the cancer center, one of the head doctors, Dr. Konda, and he was having coffee in the cafeteria. And she said, maybe I can come up and get him to take a peek at Pete. He's not his patient, but he's he's going to be going to the cancer center. And he came up and he looked at Pete and he said, he has to get to Seattle now. And there wasn't any room. There weren't any beds available. And I had friends calling, what can we do? And I said, pray that there's a bed. So just in our community, well, you know how that is.
Yeah.
Word got out. People were praying. We had a bed.
Wow.
So we get Pete down to Seattle, and he's in the ambulance, and I left a few minutes after, and the kids had said, Mom, this will be how you get there, and I'm pretty flustered, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a dark, rainy night, driving by myself to Seattle, and going down to Swedish in that heart of Seattle, and never been there before, just praying all the way down, just the Lord and I in the car. Get to Swedish, and the lights were all green. There was a parking spot right there. I asked this gentleman if I was in the right spot, if I needed to get to a certain wing in the hospital, and he said, oh, you absolutely are, and he told me exactly where to go. I still think of him as an angel. He says, remember the floor you're on, remember your color, and I probably wouldn't have,
Yeah.
But we get to Swedish, and one of the nurses said, do you know where you're staying? And in a motel? I haven't thought that far. Just get down here.
Yeah.
It was all so rushed. And she said, we'll move in a cot. So this was before COVID. So I was able to stay in a cot in Pete's room for the 10 days, which was such a blessing.
Yeah.
But they still didn't have the biopsy results. So they weren't quite sure exactly what concoction to make for him. Boy, those doctors are smart. Oh, but this head doctor said, I think this is what you have, and we're gonna get out our big guns. And it was a long journey. Pete had some serious side effects that landed him in the hospital several times, and was touch and go a couple of times. It's been a journey, but we are feeling so thankful and grateful for a clean bill of health.
So he beat it?
That's a miracle. Yes.
That's amazing. From stage 4 to remission.
His last blood test showed no evidence of disease. So
incredible.
Yes. So now going forward, you're just so. It's hard to put it into words, but just so thankful and grateful, and you want to live your best for the Lord.
Yeah.
I always have, but even now,
Has it changed how you farm?
I found that we're kind of doing the same thing, and that we truly are happy with what we're doing. When Pete was in the hospital and sick here at home, and what would you do different? And some days it's, I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to be done. Mm-hmm. And other days it's like, no, I want to keep farming. So that's why we're on our 4th year into our 2-year retirement plan.
Yeah.
But valuing each day, valuing time with family and friends, and trying to make more special times together. Yeah. We don't ever want to forget and just be so grateful and thankful, and be used by the Lord with the time we have.
So where are you at you said you're on year 4 of the 2-year retirement plan. But what's your plan for at least the near term? Just keep milking cows?
Just keep milking cows. We bought some heifers a couple weeks ago. So
I guess you're going to keep at it for a while then.
Keep those cow numbers up till we just totally decide. But,
yeah.
It's kind of something that we're thinking another year or two, but
yeah,
and it'll be time. But
are you worried about another flood?
Yes, for sure. It's always on our mind.
If that happened again, what would it mean for you guys?
Well, we'd be done. I'm sure we'd be done.
Yeah.
Enough's enough. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about that for anyone's sake, having to go through that again. Mm-hmm. But it's still, like you said, you think about it.
Right.
That's a real thing on people's minds. For
sure.
Because what has changed to prevent this from happening again?
Right. Nothing. Right?
Yeah. Scary.
It is scary. When you live along the Sumas River or the Nooksack River, any river, it is on your mind. But after this last flood, we've never seen water like that. And then we did have a lot of silt that was left behind. That just has filled in along the riverbank. And so that even displaces more water. So if we do get more high water, there's even less room for it to go. So it's a constant fear. Was not looking forward to entering fall this year. I usually like fall, but not this year. I was, a little apprehensive and watch the weather forecast and just hope we don't get too many rainy days in a row. But it's on the mind all the time.
Well, thank you for having me here into the house and around the table to hear your whole story. It's amazing. And what happened with Pete and his battle with cancer, what happened through the flood. Yeah. Amazing things.
For sure. And we just are so thankful and feel so blessed. And we couldn't have done it without our family, friends, neighbors.
Yeah.
And of course, the Lord. We're just so thankful. It's been a journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being willing to share the story with me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dylan.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.